up in community theater. Both my parents were very involved in the community theater where I was born, and my dad directed many plays there, and so it's kind of in my blood, although really I didn't get involved here or even as an adult anywhere until about 2.5 years ago when I was in my first play at CTA. And so it's hard to believe that was only 2.5 years ago, and here I am directing such a big show. But it's a great experience, and for the very enjoyable family show that has great music and it has some really good roles, not all of them on stage a lot, but they're a lot of fun for the actors to do and for the audience to watch. So I thought it was a good combination on all those points. Well, I didn't know this when I picked Annie. I mean, I knew that it was based on the comic, Little Orphan Annie, but I didn't know much about the comic, and its history is quite interesting. The comic was very, very popular in its time, and it ran for over 40 years in newspapers across the country. The people who wrote Annie got the idea for doing it, and I read that the person who wrote the music thought it was a terrible idea, and he read the comic strips and he didn't particularly like how the stories went. So they changed it quite a bit. They changed how the story works and what the characters are like. What they came up with is very appealing. It's a businessman who's all business, all money, and because of this little girl, Annie, that comes into his life from an orphanage, he changes a lot. She changes everybody that's around her because she's such an optimist and such a tough little girl, and yet she doesn't lose her heart. So she's a very appealing character, and the people who interact with her change in very positive ways.
Isn't it obvious? She's like the worst of them all.
She gets everything just handed to her.
It ain't fair.
It ain't fair.
Stop, she's no gold digger. And one day, this guy, I don't know, the Oliver Warbucks, he thinks he can just up and bring her to his mansion? Adopt her? I mean, come on. Would you rather have
A lady? I don't see no ladies.
Certainly not that hotel you got.
I am Annie. It's the story of a little pretty tough orphan girl who she really wants her mother and father back and eventually ends up at the home of a billionaire.
And I play as well Oliver Warbucks. I'm a very rich man, and I am happy to be rich. That's all I cared about until Annie came by. And through the show, I think you'll see how, hopefully, if I do it well, how Warbucks changes from somebody who is just thinking about making more and more money, billions and billions of dollars, to actually sharing that with someone else.
I don't need anything but you.
I think I'm gonna like it here.
It's a little faster. I think I'm gonna like it.
Everything theater is really exciting to me. Watching how everything comes together, the actors on stage, backstage, it's all amazing.
Easy Street, Annie is the key.
Yes,
It just feels natural.
It's so not my character. I have to tell those girls backstage I love them and I'm helping them with their hair, and then I say, be quiet, and I'm blowing a whistle. And
All lies. You should hear when she leaves. Holy cow. That's like the real Miss Hannigan comes out.
Did I hear happiness in here?
No, Miss Hannigan!
What are you doing up?
Annie's on the radio.
Yeah, I know. Next thing you know, they'll make a musical out of her.
Annie is a classic. I mean, everyone knows about Annie, and it's one of the more popular shows ever in musicals, and so people are familiar with it, and we can put our show on in a different way than nobody else has done it that way.
This is not their job. This is not their profession. And so one of the most enjoyable things for me to see is how much they can do on stage, how much they can make of their character, and what a challenge this is for all of us, and yet we come together and make a great show of it. It's community theater in the best sense.